Well, hey, hello, and welcome back to the Make the Jump podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be diving into all things RWAs with the Plume team, and we joined with Katie from Plume. Katie, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here. Really excited to dive right in.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on to talk RWA, to talk Plume. I'm sure our audience is really excited to get going, and I'm sure you guys are too.
Yeah, very excited.
It's always great to dive into a new topic on the Jumper podcast. And to be honest, this is our first time diving into RWAs. And just to set the foundation, why don't you give a slight introduction to yourself, what you personally do in terms of role over at Plume, how long you've been with the team, just so the audience know a little bit about who's on the podcast today.
Yeah, I lead DevRel and integrations at Plume. And I've been here since January. So I think it's about 7 or 8 months, but as in crypto terms, it honestly feels like a couple of years. We went live in early June, late May, and that has just been so exciting and fulfilling to see all the projects and really kind of bridging the institutions and kind of the traditional assets you would see in, the normal stock market and kind of bringing them on chain.
Amazing. So you kind of joined the team in a very important and integral part of going live. The first few months must have been quite a lot of things going on, especially with the role that you have.
Yeah, definitely. I think, one of the most important things and something that I love about my job as a DevRel and integrations is that I get to sit not only on the Eng side, but also on the business development side and ecosystem. So once a new project wants to be integrated with us, I have the great opportunity to be able to walk them through that process. And then any kind of new product development internally or any infra partner, I get to kind of play puzzle peacemaker and make those pieces fit so that our ecosystem can support large scale projects.
Amazing. It sounds like a really important role, having a DevRel at an ecosystem like Plume. It's almost like being a solutions architect at scale.
Definitely. One of my first roles actually was a sales engineer, solutions architect in a fintech, specifically servicing crypto clients. So honestly, a lot of the skill sets that I took in my Web 2 job really is usable and feasible in Web 3 roles. The only difference is that this is now on the blockchain, and a lot of the kind of activities that occur are immutable rather than, in traditional fintech or Web 2, it's kind of, a little bit higher level.
And just interesting question, because I'm just intrigued, why did you make the jump? What was it about Plume that you were like, I need to join this team and I want to be a part of this?
Well, my first job was at Bank of America and Goldman Sachs. So highly regulated, again, facing institutional clients. And I realized a lot of the assets that they had were only for either US citizens, KYC'd investors, or registered investment advisors, or high net worth individuals. So there's a lot of barriers to entry. What I really liked about what Plume is doing is, one, it's kind of new and really innovated, but it allows almost a democracy when it comes to access of these assets. So instead of jumping through the hoops and bounds that you would necessarily see in TradFi, at least in this case, it's KYC-less, and it does allow for mass adoption.
I think it's good motivation and good reasoning to get involved in. I think a lot of people within the DeFi and probably the RWA space as well make that jump over for really similar motivations. And they're inspired by the visions and the mission statements and essentially the goal that we have as we build this, not only the financial rails for tomorrow, but for today as well. And maybe we can touch on that a little bit. What is it about Plume and Plume's vision and mission that's so different to what the market is offering right now? Why should users and builders be excited about Plume's vision?
We're not just another chain. We're the number one RWA network by asset holder volume and the first ecosystem purposely built just for real world assets. So again, that democracy, that allowing mass adoption on a larger scale. And our core idea is simple. Tokenized assets are meaningless without people actually holding those real world asset tokens or without kind of having that underlying asset. So this is really important to us. We built a DeFi friendly platform. So it's not just instos holding something on chain. it allows people to use the DeFi primitives that they would on any other DeFi platform, but now the underlying asset is those RWAs. So they have that exposure.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And we've seen the ecosystem expand quickly with this. And with these like tech stacks and products that you offer, if I'm not mistaken, Nest aims to abstract away the process of getting these real world assets on chain, correct?
Exactly. So Nest is our flagship vault product. It allows you to stake, earn yield, and access these products that are tokenized by those RWAs. And typically, if you look into those RWAs that make up some of these vaults, you as an individual probably would not be able to access them unless you kind of, again, go through those hoops and bounds, unless you go through a registered investment advisor, unless you qualify as a high net worth individual, and unless you are, certain jurisdictions or your KYC. So again, like we are making it a lot easier for folks to be able to access that. And we give builders and people who want to deploy vaults everything they need. The issuance, the compliance, the settlement, and kind of like access to that yield. So today we have 8 vaults with a mix of different risk profiles that offer those yield opportunities. And if you go to the Nest website, I can send that link over. It shows the underlying asset and the makeup of that basket of vaults.
Yeah, I've heard a bit about that. Funnily enough, I was listening to one of your co-founders on a podcast, I think about a month ago, and he was essentially talking about how at the moment in the Plume ecosystem, you guys are focusing on yield quite a lot at the moment. Is that where you see your key focus right now, on offering these yield-bearing RWA products to your user base?
One of my favorite quotes is, if you don't know where the yield comes from, you are probably the yield. And so when you look at the components of the vaults and what the underlying assets are, it's pretty obvious where the yield is coming from. So I think that transparency, that ability to see where the yield is coming from is different from the other DeFi products that you would see elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that transparency is like super important and goes a long way in it being a differentiating factor on why a set group of users should choose to tap into the yield ecosystem that Plume has through the RWAs. To be honest, like the ecosystem has been expanding rapidly over at Plume. We're talking about 192,000 RWA holders, over 200 projects building within this ecosystem. If we're being honest, these are massive signals, right? But what kind of story are these numbers and the signal telling us about what type of builder and institutions Plume is currently attracting? Like, where do you see the adoption right now? And where do you see it going next?
I see this pipeline and those stats on RWA.xyz showing that our institutions are ready. These are not random meme projects, again, like where you don't know where the yield is coming from. And if you played around in DeFi long enough, you probably have lost money because, again, there's not transparency, or you just didn't take the time to, look into where the money's coming from or where these yields are coming from. What we have on Plume are real asset managers, fintechs, RWA innovators who want to bring the traditional assets on chain. And so across these 200 products, we can tokenize treasuries, credit funds, commodities, really anything that you would see in traditional markets onto Plume. And if anyone's interested, you can check out RWA.xyz. And we are the number one, RWA asset holder count in comparison to others.
It's amazing to see like the adoption and scale through institutions, through treasuries, through so much that's been going on. It just begs the question, will RWAs outgrow DeFi in the next 3 years based on, let's say, the trends that you see in the data right now? Like, what's your personal opinion?
What I see across the news and kind of every study is, tokenization can become a $16.1 trillion business. I think that was from BCG. Redstone predicts that that up to 30% of all global assets could be tokenized by 2034. So as more assets get tokenized, obviously they need a place to go. And you don't want it to be another just, again, insto platform where, again, like it's servicing the big guys rather than the everyday retail people. So we're making it easier than ever for DeFi users to access them through Plume.
Interesting case studies on these predictions of 30% of all assets being on chain as RWAs. Like, what's the time frame for that again?
I think that's probably like in the next 10 years, right? It just allows for more openness in the market, allows for folks who, again, traditionally would have to move through hoops and bounds to be able to access these assets. So it becomes more popularized as we start to see more regulation in the US government and other governments and treasuries that are recognizing, this market. I think that's when we'll start seeing a huge push in institutions. And once we already have a good kind of retail following. Once the institutions come, then more of the, trad people will come as well.
Yeah, a great trend that we're seeing right now is, we thought that we'd have to take what we're building in DeFi with RWAs and just in crypto in general, in Web3 over to these institutions. But it's great to see that institutions want to come on chain and they are adapting their approaches, and we're seeing governments adapt legislation in order to work with crypto rather than crypto and DeFi and RWAs going the other way around.
Yeah, definitely a lot more synergies as opposed to fudding what is occurring. It's pretty obvious given the makeup of the vaults, given the kinds of clients that we work with, that institutions are on Plume.
Yeah, it's honestly great signals, and it's what we want to see as people who's been in the space for some time with these visions, building the way that we do build and essentially give our lives to this for the most part. It's great to see this sort of signaling going on in the RWA space. Speaking of RWAs, what's one of your favorite real world assets that you'd love to see tokenized next that's potentially not tokenized right now?
I have a couple. I think the first is, esoterics, things that you wouldn't traditionally see, or things that I typically would never have the ability to, invest into. So I think horse racing, multi-million-dollar business. We have Derby, we have, tons, especially in the States, and they win a lot of money. So I think that's something that'd be really interesting. I don't know anyone personally. So of course I can't invest right now into a horse just because I don't have the right connections. But again, if it's on chain and it's access to everyone, maybe I could have a chance. Another one is emerging market bonds. Traditionally, those are illiquid, but again, unlocking that massive yield, unlocking the opportunity to invest in kind of that emerging market as opposed to something I would traditionally see on a Vanguard or a Robinhood.
Amazing. Those are a good couple of things. Well, hey, if anyone's in the audience listening and wants to bring your horse on chain for some horse racing, you can DM Katie and the Plume team to set that up.
Yes, that would actually be awesome, because one thing that I do love about the derbies are the outfits. So it'd be great to have an outfit and then invest at the same time.
Ooh, that'll be great. Especially I'm in the UK right now, and whenever the big horse races are on, everyone goes all out. I can see this becoming a thing. I like this. Yeah, let's chat a little bit about our partnership and our integration that's been happening. Over at Jumper, we wanted to open the doors to RWAs on chain. We wanted to open the doors to Plume itself, and we integrated Plume not too long ago on Jumper. But I'm really interested from Plume's perspective, why was integrating Jumper such a key unlock? And what is this unlocking for both the users and the ecosystem that wasn't possible before?
Mm-hmm. If you've been in crypto long enough, it takes 10 steps to get anything on a different chain, and to swap and bridge and go through the different wallets and enable this, enable that. And what we really love about Jumper is that it really lowers the barrier for folks, retail and institutions alike, to be able to get their assets on Plume. Simple as that.
Yeah, and that's the value that we aim to bring within the market. We support over 50 different chains, and no matter what chain that you're on, we have routes to get you through to Plume, to explore the ecosystem. But what I'd like to hear from you, Katie, is once users have gone through the journey of being on Jumper and moving their funds over to Plume and stepping into the RWA-focused ecosystem, what are the top things that they can engage with today? And does this reflect the broader patterns that you're seeing on chain of what your users are doing today?
Mm-hmm. We have a stablecoin called PUSD. That is accessed through Jumper. They can also access those nest vaults. So again, instead of jumping through those different hoops, having to switch through different chains, bridge and swap it and all those things, what's great about kind of that UI is I can go from whatever chain is supported into one of those Plume assets. And we do have those nest vaults and those tokens. So folks can just immediately, swap and bridge into one of those.
Amazing. It's this integration offers a seamless experience just to get into those nest vaults, and we should push this a little bit more and get more people jumping into Plume. I think that would be amazing from our end to do this. We've kind of touched on a lot that's been happening in Plume over the last little while. And I think a lot has been happening. It's been really interesting to hear a little bit more about Nest, talk a little bit about, our integration. But what if we talk about this next quarter that's left of 2025? What's on Plume's roadmap?
We do have an Ascend Accelerator program. This is the first dedicated RWA startup accelerator program. I believe we have over 140 startups that have applied to join, and we have awesome partners like Galaxy, Morpho, OKX, Anchorage, Centrifuge. So it's going to be really, really, enticing to see who gets accepted. I think on the 2nd, September 2nd, we're going to announce the selected folks, but we're working with large institutions to really help those accelerators and help them deploy successfully on Plume. Another thing too is that we're also going to be at the RWA Summit in New York and then heading to Korea for Korea Blockchain Week and also Token 2049. So we have a huge presence, not only in New York, but in Asia, again, expanding that global presence to allow for more mass adoption.
Amazing. Wow, Plume's not just everywhere on chain, but off chain as well, globally by the sounds of it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
In terms of the accelerator, like if you're listening and you're interested and want to find out a little bit more, we'll drop some links in the podcast description, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify, so you can check the accelerator out itself. Katie, this has been honestly really great and really informative for our audience to not just see Plume as an integration partner, but rather as a doorway into RWAs and interest-bearing, yield-bearing RWAs as well. Do you have any last comments or anything that you want to share with our audience today as we land this podcast?
Yeah, the RWA adoption is inevitable, in my opinion. What we're seeing now, it's just the beginning. And so the earlier that you are, the more that you kind of do your due diligence and research who's working with what institutions, the better off you will be.
Amazing. So don't sleep on RWAs. Get involved in the Plume ecosystem and onboard via Jumper. Well, Katie, thanks for hopping on the Make the Jump podcast. It's been a pleasure and hope to have you on here again sometime in the future.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
That's only a pleasure. To everyone over at Jumper, thanks for tuning in and we'll see you next week for another episode.